I'm just putting this out there. Borg Queen, if you're watching, you can mess with my stress hormones any day if you want to. Hello interwebs, I hope you're doing well because I am here to review the latest episode of Star Trek Picard Season 2, Episode 6, 241. And I am very excited to talk about this episode because it featured a gala, or if I might be more accurate, a gala, because this episode was very gay, and I was very here for it. But before we get to that, as per usual, I'm going to give my spoiler-free thoughts, and then I will give a warning before we get into my spoiler-filled specifics on the episode. But staying general here, I have kind of disparate thoughts on this episode as a whole. On the one hand, this was easily one of the most fun episodes of this season. I mean, if you watched the end of last episode, you know that we were going in for kind of a heist scenario with our characters sort of infiltrating a gala, as I said before. And they do take advantage of a lot of the fun of that. There are some choice moments, most specifically between Jurati and the Borg Queen, that are a ton of fun that I just was like relishing every single moment of. Like the showrunners were definitely having a lot of fun with those two characters in particular, but all of them were always having a few nice moments. But I also feel like the episode didn't really take full advantage of the sort of heist gala scenario, and I think a lot of that comes down to there weren't a lot of like elements in play that we already knew going into the gala in order to have the characters play with. I mean, when you watch a heist movie, a lot of what heist movies do is they set up a lot of the expectations of what's going to happen before, so that when things go off course, you'll be like, oh god, what are the characters going to do? But here, we didn't really have any expectations of their plan, and so a lot of the characters just sort of mill about, just sort of talking to each other, and then go and deal with the problem if it arises, but don't really do anything otherwise. And so we don't really have a sense of like what the danger is, what the threat is, and it kind of lets down a lot of the opportunity that this heist episode sort of gives the show. But again, as I said, there's a lot of fun in here too, and there's a couple really good character moments even outside of Jurati and the Borg Queen. I think specifically Picard gets a really wonderful and sweet moment that harkens back to why I love Star Trek more than anything. Like, there's just one scene here that really hit me in the gut, and I'm like, this is why I love Star Trek, for these specific moments, and reminded me of why I not only love Star Trek, but also the character of Picard, because as we saw with last season, where we got that we have powerful tools Rio speech that we got in, I think, episode 8 of season 1, there's just a speech here that Picard gives that like, oh yeah, I like seeing Picard at this stage in his life, being able to give these pearls of wisdom, and I really thought that it was just one of the sweetest scenes that we got in probably the entire series up to this point. And I think that scene and a few others really make this episode worthwhile, even if I don't feel like they ever coalesce in something greater than the sum of its parts. And with that greater than the sum of its parts bit, I also have to point out there's also a few scenes in here that messed with me logically. I sort of watched them like, I love this scene, but you're throwing me out with a little bit of the logic behind it, and it kind of threw me and made me scratch my head a little bit. And that's saying something for me, because I'm usually more forgiving of those things than most of my fellow Trek reviewers, who will like call out like, oh, this doesn't make sense, this doesn't make sense, this doesn't make sense. I'm usually a little bit more forgiving on that, and even I was like, you're stretching it a bit for me here. So like I said, ultimately, with my spoiler-free thoughts, I end on the very disparate feelings that I have here. On one hand, some of the best scenes I've seen this entire season so far, and that's saying something because I've been generally really enjoying this season, but also it never really coalesces into something greater when I really feel like this episode had the potential to be something really, really special, and it never really quite gets there for me. But to talk about those specifics, I am going to have to get into spoilers, so quick spoiler warning here. But before we get into my deep dive, I just want to give everyone a reminder, because I'm very excited. Ooh, voice scratching here. That just shows you how excited I am. But if you're watching this video the day that it goes up, that means this Thursday, I am currently traveling to Chicago to attend Star Trek Mission Chicago, which is the convention, the official Star Trek convention happening in Chicago. I am so excited. I can't wait to be with all my fellow Trekkies, because y'all are my people, and I'm so pumped. And I'm sharing my excitement, not only because I just want to share my excitement, but because if you are going to that convention, I am going to be appearing on 2 panels. The information should be down below right here in the screen. So if you're going to be at the convention, please come by, say hi, join me, and see a wonderful panel. There's going to be Trek authors, going to be people from Women at Warp, which is a wonderful Star Trek podcast that you should be listening to, even if you've never heard of it. It'll just be a generally fun time, so please come join me if you're going to be at the convention. If not, look for my pictures, because I'm going to be posting a lot of pictures from there. I'm going to get a picture with frickin' Anson Mount, and I'm very pumped about it. It's going to be a good time. But me being a giant dork out of the way, let me be a further dork by talking about this episode's spoilers. So the first thing that we should talk about with this episode is the interesting editing choice that they made, where they did the sort of flash forward showing us that Picard had gotten run over, and then sort of did a chime jump backwards saying like 38 minutes before, and we're supposed to sort of get like a sense of like, oh no, something's gonna happen to Picard, and that could be effective. I've seen TV shows do that from time to time, but I was a little bit thrown off by it here, because when I saw that opening like time code of like 38 minutes earlier, and I saw the runtime of this episode being 38 minutes, it kind of gave me the impression that the episode was going to be in real time, like, let's say an episode of 24, for example. But as we got further into the episode, they kind of lost that after Picard got run over at the midway point, which was about like 20 minutes into the episode. I'm like, oh, okay, I guess this isn't taking place in real time. And so it kind of like gave that impression and expectation, and it didn't really pay it off. And even if it did pay it off, I didn't really feel like there was anything that really necessitated it being in real time to give us that sort of tension of like everything happening at the exact moment that we're watching it. And so I ultimately thought that not only was that wasted, but it kind of just gave a misleading impression right off the bat. However, this does bring me to one of my favorite parts of the episode, which is Jurati and the Borg Queen. I loved the initial moment where Jurati has to sort of succumb to the Borg Queen initially to get her out of the cuffs in order to help her friends in time. And I like the sort of slow trickle of the Borg Queen just getting inside Jurati's head and trying to convince her to listen to her and to use her abilities in order to get them out of these situations. I thought that just sort of that threat that the Borg Queen placed on Jurati was really, really, really well done. And we all have to admit it, there was definitely like some sexual tension going on between these two. And also, I'm going to call this out here. There was a joke about pronouns where the Borg Queen says, is that the correct pronoun to use when you have a friend inhabiting your body? And I'm like, there you go. Look, a big budget TV show actually did like trans adjacent humor well. Shocker. You can actually do that sort of humor and have it be funny and not be at the expense of trans people. I'm here for it. I thought that was a funny joke. I was loving all of that stuff. And I also loved the Borg Queen saying like, oh, I'm tired of these stress hormones. Like she's very much bringing it down to a scientific level, but also trying to release those stress hormones by having Jurati kiss Rios and things like that. I thought, which only increased Jurati's stress, of course. But I also like that moment too with Rios because it reminded me from last season that the two did have a connection. I mean, they fucked last season. It was a very hot scene. I can't believe I forgot it, to be honest with you. But I also like the reminder that Rios does like care about Jurati, that he does have some maybe not necessarily romantic feelings for her anymore, but does care for her. And I really did appreciate that reminder and that scene being shown here. But speaking of Rios though, we also got a scene with him and Raffi where I thought was also really nice, where we see that Rios is very much enjoying 21st century. He's like, oh look, it's a real cigar. It's not one of those fake like synthahol cigars apparently that they got in the 24th century that we saw him sort of playing with in the first episode of the season, but never smoking. If you notice, he never actually lit it in the first episode, because I guess no smoking on starships if we listen to what Gene Roddenberry wanted. That was a whole thing in Star Trek the Motion Picture. Go look it up. It's a fun little story. But also, Raffi called out Rios for being in love, and that sort of causing butterflies. And I did like her saying, like, when you go back in time and you're a time traveler, your relationship's already going to be built on lies. And I thought that was a very good point by Raffi. But it does lead me to believe that maybe Rios might be sticking around at the end of the season. Maybe at the end of the season, Rios stays in the 21st century. That might be something that we get to see, considering that we do start to see a development of his relationship with the Doctor later on in the episode. Another thing, too, that I did really appreciate about this scene was Raffi and Rios looking at Seven, and Seven seeing like she can talk up with the crowd and seems to be enjoying herself and being very sociable, which is not a very 7 of 9 thing to do, as we've come to know the character both in Voyager and Picard Season 1. And what I appreciated about this was Raffi saying it's nice to see her carrying things light for a while. Because one of the things that I expressed concerns about, I think back in episode 3, was clearly they are going for a discussion on 7 of 9's trauma and the trauma that she still carries from having been an ex-Borg, and sort of pushing people away because of that trauma. And I'm still somewhat worried and tepid about the fact that the show will be like, she's better off without having had experienced trauma. And I understand the impetus to want to say that, and I don't want to also say that, like, trauma is worthwhile and it makes you better, it makes you stronger, in that very, like, M. Night Shyamalan sort of way that he did in that one movie, which was also problematic in its own sense. But there is a middle ground to be found where it's just like, trauma is just part of you and we just can move forward and not necessarily wishing to, like, wish it away, but also acknowledging that it was harmful as well, and sort of having that nuanced discussion. And so Raffi sort of saying, it's nice to see her carrying light for a while, but acknowledging that it's not a forever thing, I thought was a nice little nod to that nuance. And I appreciated that. I'm still concerned where they're going to go with that storyline eventually, but the little bits and pieces that we've been getting of it throughout the season so far, I've been enjoying. And I think it's been showcasing to me that they're aiming to do this right. We'll see if they stick the landing on that, though. But speaking of sticking the landing, we also have Picard and Laris. I keep forgetting the supervisor's name. I'm just going to keep calling her Laris, even though that's not her real name. Though Picard does also continue to call her Laris, and we clearly get evocations that Picard does have feelings for her. Does have feelings for the character of Laris, not necessarily the supervisor. And here is my guess of what is going on and why this character looks like Laris. Because in this scene, Picard talks to the supervisor and says, you need to be able to start getting involved with people. You can't just watch people from afar all the time, like she's been doing with Renee, like just over doting and over caring for Renee from afar, and like knowing all the little mannerisms, like when she touches her ear, and like loving her from afar, but not really ever getting involved, right? And I think that this means is that I think he is subtly going to influence this supervisor to want to get involved more often with her subjects, which eventually leads her to become Laris in the future, and she is actually Jean-Luc Picard's supervisor. And that's why she gets to know him in the future, because Picard influenced her to get to know her subjects, and then she gets assigned to Jean-Luc later on. And so that's why Laris starts to fall for Jean-Luc, because Picard also influenced her in the past. So it's going to be like one of those like self-fulfilling prophecy sort of things. I don't know how that fits in with the weird time travel shenanigans going on the rest of the season, but that's my sort of guess on why she looks like Laris, because she is actually Laris. So I enjoyed all of that. But then this brings us to a scene where Picard is confronted by Adam Soong, played by Brent Spiner. I like Picard sort of being like, wait, is this Data? What's going on? And then he sort of realizes when he says that he's Soong, he's like, oh yeah, all you Soongs look alike. It's very weird and strange. But I like Patrick Stewart sort of giving like, oh yeah, no, I get it now. And this scene was weird for me, though, overall, because I did like Soong sort of saying, like, I don't want to really be involved in this. I'm just doing this because Q's got me involved, so stay out of my way. That was a good threat, and I liked that it sort of placed Soong in, like, I don't really want to deal with this, but I'm going to because I have to, so get the hell out of my way. But then he sort of walks away, and we get this sort of, like, hint that he's become part of the board of the Europa mission, which he may be able to influence stuff, and then Picard almost gets arrested. And I was sort of confused by, like, what was Soong's plan here? I wish there was, like, a more clear, like, maybe he called for the guards or said something specific. It was just a little unclear what the danger was and what his plan was in this situation, just to the point where, like, I wish they had just been a little bit clearer, and so it kind of confused me. Though this did lead to another interesting moment where, in order to cause a distraction, Jurati and the Borg Queen shut down the power, and Jurati sings a song, and this is where I have so many conflicted feelings. Because on the one hand, this scene was amazing. I loved Alison Pill getting to sing her heart out. It was really wonderful. And the revelation that the Queen was manipulating her in order to get better control of her body by sort of reducing the stress hormones that were blocking her nanobots was great, leading to the final scene of the episode where Jurati's just walking towards Los Angeles. The Borg Queen in control of her body. It was creepy and eerie, and I am so here for it. I'm loving everything with Jurati and the Borg Queen. That being said, the logic of this scene weirded me out because the power goes out, so we have the power out, but then they have a spotlight that's ready and trained to just aim at this random person who's singing. Like, no one knew that Jurati was going to be there, and then the band starts playing, and like, oh yeah, we know this song, and they just go along with her. It was very strange, and I almost thought that it was a dream sequence, but it wasn't. It was clearly happening, and so I was just thrown off by, like, what was exactly happening and how this was supposed to go off. It was very strange, and believe me, as a theater kid, as someone who loved theater, I know that every theater person is ready with the spotlight to be like, someone's singing, give her the spotlight, go. I know, we are here for you. But it did weird me out logically in this scene, but it did lead to a lot of fun and a great ending for their arc of this episode. So one half or the other. But this does also lead us to probably my favorite scene of the episode, which is Picard going to talk to Renee. And I thought that this scene was just absolutely sweet. I mean, one of the things that I absolutely loved about it is we get a Star Trek Enterprise reference, because we see this ship hanging up, and this is the little ship that Archer was playing with in the episode Broken Bow, that I even have a model of. I was very excited for that. So Star Trek Enterprise references makes my heart little heart swoon. You know what I'm trying to say. But on a more serious note, besides Easter eggs, it was also a very sweet scene between Picard and Renee. Him talking just like, no, fear is natural and normal. It's part of who we are, but you just always have to look for the positivity and hope within these moments and look for the light. I thought it was a very realistic message, especially as someone who myself deals with anxiety a lot. I mean, I've had the exact same panic attacks that Renee is having. Maybe not as an astronaut, but I've been at parties where I've had those type of panic attacks and self-doubts a lot of the time. I have it every day, even had it earlier today. So I thought that this scene was really sweet. And I just spoke to everything that I love Star Trek for, that like finding hope in the darkness, I thought was just absolutely wonderful. And his chemistry with Renee Picard was wonderful. Like the very grandfatherly Picard, I thought was wonderful. But then this led us to a scene where Picard gets run over by Soong, and I'm like, whew, all right, Soong, I thought you were the intellectual dude. He's like, nah, fuck it, I'm gonna run him over. Leading to what we saw at the beginning of the episode, and then Picard going and getting taken away by to the doctor that Rios knows. And I love the doctor sort of being upset at Rios and like still not trusting him completely. I get that Rios has feelings for her, and I get that she likes him to a degree, but I like that she's not, oh, I'll do anything for you, Rios. That she's like, something's not right here. You're not fully on the level. And I liked her distrust of him. I thought that was a great scene there. But this also brings us to another scene with Soong, where he goes and sort of talks to his daughter, and then his daughter starts investigating him, and we got basically what I kind of predicted was that we don't know it specifically, but clearly his daughter is some version of either an artificial intelligence like Data, like an android, or some sort of eugenics thing, or maybe she's just like a symbiote that he grew. And it kind of fits in perfectly with the history of we know where Earth is at this point, because I think they're leading, considering all the words eugenics that we saw on the screen, that this is leading to the eugenics wars, that there's some sort of fill into the eugenics wars going on that they're building for World War III, which I'm very cool to see. But it also fits in with the Soong family history, because we know that the next Soong that we see in Star Trek Enterprise was working with augments and genetic engineering, and then the Soong that we see way in the far future of Next Generation was also working with Data. So I love that Adam Soong's sort of kind of in the middle of both of those two, playing with both elements, and again leading into the eugenics wars that we know are possibly to come in the near future of Earth at this time. So excited for all of that. The only knock that I have against that scene is there was clearly a lot of like ADR voiceover by Soong's daughter. I forget her actual name. While she was like looking at stuff, she's like, "Why haven't I seen this photo before? What are you doing, Dad? What's this name?" Like it was just a lot of like clearly they edited in her voice after the fact to sort of make clear the scenes, and I didn't think we needed it. I felt like it was a little bit too much. I would have gotten from the actors' reactions to what's going on that she was shocked by it. I didn't need like the added voiceover. I think that was taking it a little bit too far and not trusting the audience enough. It's a minor thing. It just threw me a little bit too much. She was talking to herself and saying things clearly there for the audience's benefit. But regardless, not a big deal. But this brings us to the last scene of the episode, where we clearly see that Picard's doing okay, but he's still trapped in a memory. Clearly probably the memory of his parents arguing and his father potentially being abusive, again, leading into these themes of abuse that I know that Patrick Stewart wants to address, considering it was something that was in his past, and dealing with ideas of domestic abuse. So clearly we're going to have the Laris character going into Picard's brain in order to sort of evoke and see this trauma and sort of have him deal with it. And I like this idea of it because something that Kiva Goldsman, one of the executive producers on the show, mentioned was that trauma is like one form of time travel that we have. And that is a very true thing in a lot of senses. Trauma and PTSD specifically is about re-experiencing things. A lot of PTSD causes us to re-experience traumatic events and be stuck in those moments, which is clearly being shown by Picard here and sort of needing to drag him out. So I'm curious next episode what we're going to see there, but it does fit with those themes of time travel and trauma and scars in the past. I really do think that the themes of all of that are definitely tying all together here. But with all that being said, that's my thoughts on this episode. Like I said, very mixed reactions. I think there were some excellent scenes here and excellent moments and character development, and yet ultimately I don't think they ever coalesced in anything greater than the sum of their parts within this story so far. So overall, I'm generally positive on the episode and has some of my favorite scenes of the season, but definitely not my favorite episode overall of the season. But I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. What did you think about the episode? Like I said, don't forget that I'm going to Mission Chicago, so if you'll be there, I look forward to seeing you there. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel for all my news, reviews, reactions. I'll be doing reviews of Moon Knight and stuff like that on this channel as well. And don't forget to subscribe to my main channel, Jessie, where I do my more video essay type stuff. I recently did a review of Star Trek Discovery Season 4 over there, my sort of written out thoughts on that, so check that out if you're curious. But beyond all of that, thank you so much for watching. I hope that you, as always, my friends, live long and prosper.